All right. The reason that I'm grinning like a naughty schoolchild girl is because I have snuck Teddy into the office. Teddy's a feral cat. Yes, you are, aren't you? You're feral. Yes, you are. Teddy was a feral cat until about a month ago. We got him from the Humane Society. They basically give away the feral ones to be barn cats. And within a couple of weeks, he just turned into the biggest love bug in the world. He follows me around all day. He's obsessed with me. Teddy is obsessed with me. Aren't you, Teddy? I was riding a horse this morning. He followed me into the arena on a horse. But anyway, and so I haven't told Matt that he's in here because we've already got 2 cats and 5 barn cats, 2 indoor cats, 5 outdoor cats. Well, now it's 3 indoor cats, isn't it, Teddy? And 4 outdoor cats. So Matt says no more indoor cats. But I like, how can you resist that face? It's just not possible. He's a little prince. But anyway. All right, little boy. You gotta go down because I gotta do some serious stuff. All right. Yeah, so that's Teddy. All right. Ooh, lots of questions. I'm going to pick it from the middle. All right. Lauren says, Tabitha, I can't seem to stop doing OCD rituals. Going up and down the stairs multiple times a day is really hurting my body. Give me any advice. Stop it. I'm just not even kidding. The only way you're going to stop it is by stopping it. You have to stop. It is a decision. Every single time that you go up and down the stairs, you are actively making a decision to do that. Nothing is making you do it. Nobody's pushing you up and down the stairs. You are making a decision to do it, and you are the only person that can make yourself make the decision not to do it. You have all of the willpower in the world. Everybody with an eating disorder does. You can be as stubborn as shit. You can stop it. So stop it. All right. Marie says, isn't mental hunger a normal thing? I know a lot of people who say, I wish that I could eat that, but I gained so much weight. But they're healthy. Restriction's a pretty normal thing in our society. So yes, restriction is very normalized in our society. Therefore, a lot of people have sometimes low level, not like on the raging level that you have when you have a proper, like, full-blown restrictive eating disorder, but a lot of people have mental hunger because they're restricting. Ina says, I have a close relative who died of problems caused by his high weight. How can I not be influenced by his experience during recovery? You probably might know also somebody that's died by being run over, but you still get in a car, don't you? That your brain can use anything that it thinks is an excuse for you not to do the thing that you're afraid of. If you had a fear of getting in cars and you had a friend that got run over, then your brain would use that as, see, I can never go in a car. Our brains will use anything that they can to justify us not doing the things that we're afraid of. That's your brain's job. Your brain's job is to keep you away from things that it's afraid of. And so you have to focus on what you need to do for your health. What anybody else's life did is kind of beside the point. This is about you and your body and what is happening in this present moment, what you need to do in this present moment. And you need to eat, evidently. Okay, Jenny. How to stop the diet mindset of good and bad foods. So, well, we've got a lot of unlearning to do. It's part of neural rewiring, is unlearning all of the things that we think are factual and the things that we learn, when we have a restrictive eating disorder. I talk about this a lot, but nutritional science, in terms of like science, is not really science. It's just more like people doing guessing and making correlations out of observations, because it's not very ethical to lock a load of people in a laboratory and completely control their diet and like measure all of their things and stuff like that. And so therefore, because pretty much all of the studies that we do in nutritional science either have to be done on not humans in a petri dish or on animals, or they have to be done on humans but in a highly uncontrolled environment where we can't control barely any of the variables. It's all just really making guesses, and most of the stuff that's done on humans is just correlational. And we all know that correlation is not causation. But however, when it comes to nutritional science, because that's kind of like the best it can get, people go, well, that probably sounds good enough. I might just go with that. And we know that gets us into all sorts of shit. Look at Ansel Keys. Like, it gets us into all sorts of problems when we start making big statements from nutritional science studies that really we shouldn't be making big statements from. And then the media get all over it, they jump all over it, and they spread it out to everyone, and everybody goes like, oh my God, we can't eat dairy ever again because it's going to kill us all. And so we just, sometimes, a lot of the time, I think that when humans didn't even know that nutritional science was a thing, we really actually were forced to have a relationship with this thing right here. We were far healthier. But now, a lot of people have a relationship, when it comes to food, they have more of a relationship with the internet than they do with their own bodies. And they're looking for people writing things on the internet to guide them as to how their body should eat. I mean, just how bizarre is that? Think about it. Your body's sitting there going like, yo, I'm hungry. And you're going, well, let me ask the internet actually whether I can eat that. The internet doesn't know everything. Definitely doesn't know what your body's doing right now. I mean, it would be weird if it did, wouldn't it? God, perish the thought. Can't wait till that day when the internet does actually know what my body's doing. Hook me up. Anyway, so I forgot what the question was, but how to stop the diet mindset of good and bad foods. So with that into account, that we don't actually really know most of the things that we think we know when it comes to nutrition. And then you've got this body that's sitting here going like, I know what I'm doing. I know that I need sugar right now. Does it matter what your judgment over the food is? If your body's saying, I need to eat a donut, does it matter actually that you may have learned or been taught that donuts are not good for you and therefore you shouldn't eat it? No, of course it doesn't matter. What matters is your body's opinion. And your body is giving you its opinion. Your opinion doesn't matter because you don't know shit. I hope that answers your question. Oh, I lost my space. God, I hate it when that happens. Okay, Lindsay says, my doctor diagnosed me with gluten intolerance. I have now been gluten-free for 6 years. Is this valid or just another form of restriction? I wasn't restricting when I was diagnosed. Well, okay, so this is going to sound, I feel like, I don't know how to say this without sounding insulting to doctors, but sometimes doctors are taught stuff and then they kind of like have a little bit of a go-to response to everything. And I have some friends who are doctors and they're very smart people and they've got a lot of education and, for the most part are brilliant. But then I noticed some like doctors that are just like, have a bit of a go-to as this is going to, it's either gluten intolerance or dairy intolerance, and they just like slap that on everyone. I'm not necessarily saying that that's happened to you. I don't know your situation. I don't know your doctor. I'm just saying that that's a thing that happens. Like doctors, just like everybody else, are susceptible to marketing and ideas and opinions. And so if a doctor is sort of sold the gluten intolerance thing, then a lot of their patients get found to be gluten intolerant. Again, not saying that that's a thing, and that's just an observation that I have. And the other thing is that gluten intolerance is just all these different levels. Like, is it gluten intolerant that you're in absolute pain, sort of you can't even move and it's awful, awful? Or is it gluten intolerant that you just, feel a little bit uncomfortable for 20 minutes and then it's over? And it's just like, well, what level of gluten intolerance is that? And if it's not celiac disease, then it's all sort of like maybe a bit perception based. And then, so you're saying, is this valid or just another form of restriction? And I think that when the problem is when you have a restrictive eating disorder, you can use everything and anything as a form of restriction, can't you? And so I'm just saying that the decision that I might make if I was in recovery from an eating disorder, and especially if I had the sort of gluten intolerance that wasn't the worst thing in the world, it was just slightly uncomfortable, I might decide that in order to fully recover from my eating disorder, I was going to maybe just not think about the gluten intolerance bit too much and eat gluten and see how that goes, and prioritize eating in a way that I need to recover from a restrictive eating disorder. If you're fully recovered from restrictive eating disorder, I mean fully, properly, completely recovered, I do think it's possible to then be like, I do have a serious gluten intolerance and I need to be gluten intolerant and not eat gluten. And I think it's possible absolutely to stay recovered with that diagnosis However, I think that in order to get to full recovery, you just sometimes got to be a little bit sensible. And, nothing is perfect. There's no we're working with bodies, and sometimes this bit works and that bit, and nobody's body is completely perfect. And if you're working with a body that doesn't maybe respond to gluten in the best way possible, but also you're thinking, well, like, eating disorder can be absolutely life-threatening and it can just make me fucking miserable for the rest of my life. Maybe spending 6 months to a year that you're in recovery eating gluten isn't the worst thing that you could do. We've just got to weigh all of these things up. And of course, I do not know, when you say to me, I've been diagnosed with gluten intolerance, that can mean a lot of different things, actually. So I can't really answer that question very accurately, but I just wanted to throw some things out there for maybe you to consider, because I think the fact that you're asking that question to me means that you have suspicions that actually your brain is jumping on this gluten intolerance and using it as a form of restriction. And that's got to be taken really seriously, because that will make your life not as happy as it could be, as if you're fully recovered. And I don't know who, but like some philosopher, one smart person once said that the purpose of life is to be happy. So, you know what I know? I know that gluten makes me happy. It really does. All right. How did you get over the fear of weight gain? Writing a book on it won't be long. All right, I've lost my place again. It's like jumping around today. Hey, I wanted to eat until I am awfully full. I'm not even underweight. I still gain a lot of weight and I'm still wanting to binge. All right. Well, first of all, cross out the bit where it says I'm not even underweight, because that doesn't matter. You can have an eating disorder at any weight, so cross that bit out. Your weight, like if your body is asking you for more food and you're restricting food, it's as simple as the only way out of this nightmare scenario is going to be to eat without restriction and stop fighting your body and let your body get on with doing what it's trying to do. You can have an eating disorder at any weight. So whether you are underweight, not considered underweight, or overweight, or considered overweight, it doesn't make any difference. The advice is still the same. Restriction is not the answer to making you and your body happy. There is no point where your body's just going to go, oh, you know what? You're right. I don't need this food. You're right. You know what? I'm going to stop asking. There's no point when your body's going to do that. Your body is going to continue to fight you, and it's going to fight you harder and harder and harder and harder, and it's going to push you to binge. When you don't eat, it will push you to binge. Binging is your body's response to your restriction. You will not fight your body and win. So the only answer is to stop fighting your body. Hope that helps. Hope I got the question right. But all right, one more. How did you manage to go cold turkey and exercise? Do you have an alert method? Do you have an alert method for live videos? I don't know. Is that a thing? Is that like a function I put on that goes beep, beep, going live? I don't know. How did I stop compulsive exercise? Well, I wrote, I think, a pretty big section of this in books and blogs. And I think I've done a whole podcast, I think, on compulsive movement exercise. But the short version, you can't be bothered with any of that. The short version is I just one day stopped. I went cold turkey. And the decision to do that was seriously the hardest decision I have ever made. Like, it took me about 3 years to come to that decision. It took me about 3 years from the point where I contemplated, I have a problem with exercise and I need to stop, like when that first properly entered my head. And then it maybe took a year of me like ignoring that and being like, it's not a thing. And then maybe like somewhere along the line, I actually started to acknowledge this really is a thing, but then I still continued to pretend that it wasn't a thing. And then, like I would also went through a really long stage where every single morning when I got up and I pulled on my running trainers and I was forcing myself out the door, where I would be having like lustful dreams of not having to do this. Lustful dreams of just being a person who could wake up and eat breakfast and not have to go running ever again, because I hated running. And I went for a really long time of almost every single step I took running I just wanted to stop. And I still didn't stop. And all of that came together at some point. And then one day I just went, fuck it. I'm not doing it anymore. But it, like that, what I'm just trying to illustrate was that for me was not an easy decision. And we got to remember that back when I was doing that, like no one was talking about compulsive exercise. No one was even saying it was real, that it was a thing, that it was part of an eating disorder. So I had nobody sitting here like I'm sitting here telling you, saying you have to stop it. I had nobody doing that. In fact, everybody was kind of like, oh, exercise is so good for you. Keep it up. You know, oh, look at you. Aren't you great running marathons? And so it was like, that's I think part of the reason why it was so difficult for me, because there were no voices out there saying you can stop exercise or you should stop exercise. And so it took me a really, really long time to get to that decision. And I was so miserable. I was really, really, really not a happy person. I hated running. I hated my life. I hated all the movement I had to do every day. I couldn't even sit down. Like I wouldn't be able to sit here now. I couldn't sit down during the day. It was just horrific. But anyway, it doesn't matter if it's sort of a huge amount of compulsive movement or even just a tiny amount of compulsive movement. It's still miserable and you still have to stop. And the only way that you're going to stop is by making yourself stop. And so that decision was just horrible, getting to it. The hardest decision I've ever had to make. And then the actual stopping exercise was wonderful. It was blissful. Like I woke up that first morning and it was like, I had to almost pinch myself. I couldn't believe it. It's like, I don't have to go running. What? Really? It was like I was in a dream and I was worried that I'd burst it. It was just wonderful not to have to do it, not to have to do any of it. I didn't have to do the standing. I didn't have to do the walks around the block. I didn't have to do the extra walking where I really could have taken the car to get groceries. I just didn't have to do any of it. And it was just so wonderful. And I think that you can make a choice in that moment. I could either allow those feelings of guilt and shame and you're doing the wrong thing and all of that to come in, or I could decide to be like, you know what, this is bliss. Because the two things were present in me. But one part of my brain was trying to make me feel super guilty for not going for my run and doing all the shit that I used to do. And another part of my brain was just like, oh, thank you. And I just kind of capitalized on the part of my brain that was like, this is amazing. And it was amazing. Best decision I've ever made. Hardest decision, one of the best. I say one of the best because like my husband's pretty great and I did make the decision to marry him, but that wasn't a hard decision. Not compared to the exercise thing. Anyway, guys, I gotta go. Nice to talk to you. I'll be back later in the week.